Washington, D.C. this morning, and I overcame the traffic, so I'm feeling good already. My business, Christine Haas Consulting, which is me, and yes, it did take me quite a long time to come up with that name. That's what people often want to know. I specialize in marketing and communications, mostly for science and engineering organizations. And I'm here today to talk to you specifically about communication. And I titled my presentation, It's All Geek to Me, because I think that communication today can be really overwhelming. Does anybody agree with me? Yeah, because there's so many different types of communication that we can use. So for example, we can talk face-to-face with somebody, which I still think is one of the best and most powerful forms of communication. We can talk to somebody on a telephone. If you're cool, you probably talk to them on a phone that looks a little bit more like this. You can talk to somebody through a brochure. You can talk to someone through your website. You can have a Facebook page where people can like you. You can have a Twitter account where people can tweet about you, whatever that means. You can connect with somebody on LinkedIn. You can send them a newsletter, and the list goes on and on and on. And I actually didn't even put email up there besides the newsletter, because I think email is just like this whole class and world unto itself. So I think communication can be really overwhelming. The other thing is, I think for scientists and engineers, and I think the construction field sort of falls into this, communication can be particularly difficult because there's a whole background knowledge that you need to have, and a lot of terminology that goes along with that can be really difficult to distill for somebody, particularly somebody who's outside your field. And so what I want to do is talk to you a little bit today about how you can basically give effective communication to those both within and outside your field. And I think of this effective communication almost like a bridge. And it's a bridge that's not always easy to build, but it's an important bridge to build. Because obviously communication really makes or breaks our business, right? And even when you talk to somebody, even if it's just a very simple exchange, it's a really important piece of information that you're giving to somebody, and that affects how they look at you and how they look at your business, and affects the perception of your field. So communication is quite important. Which is why I work with a couple colleagues from Penn State University. We have Michael Alley, who I believe is on your left, and Melissa Marshall, who's on your right. And with them, we actually teach a number of workshops on technical presentations and on technical writing. And we travel around the world teaching scientists and engineers this because we think it's a really important field and something that people need to be more aware of. And so I'm going to talk to you mostly today about presentations, and I don't necessarily mean giving a presentation to 300 people. I mean when you're in a meeting and talking to somebody, if you're talking to a client, or if you are giving a presentation. And I think that some of these tips can be used across various types of communication, but I'm going to focus mostly on presentations. And so the first thing that you want to think about is your audience. And you want to think about things like, who are they? Why are they here? What background knowledge do they have? What biases might they have? But most importantly, you want to think about, how is your idea, how is the information that you're giving them relevant to them? It's the so what, it's the why should they care about what you're discussing. And that basically means finding the overlap between your ideas and their life. So for example, I have some engineers that I teach that work in prosthetics engineering. And so I say to them, you can't just tell people, oh, I work in prosthetics. You have to tell them that I work in prosthetics because this is a field that I'm advancing that gives people their lives back, lives that they might have not otherwise had. So it's the so what, it's the why should I care about what you do. The other thing you need to think about is while you're giving this information, you need to think about distilling down that information to the most important pieces. So for example, if you think about your background knowledge as a school of fish, and you think about what are the most important pieces, you want to distill down that information to make it memorable and understandable for the people that you're speaking to. And most people generally get to this point right here, but you actually want to go further. And you want to distill down to the big 2 to 3 ideas that you have for somebody to walk away with. And so that means that making sure that you're very specific about the pieces of information that you're giving, and that they can really clearly see what you're talking about and what you're discussing, so that they can walk away and share that information with somebody else. And so in order to help make this memorable, it's also important to use things like stories and analogies, examples. The other thing to remember is to definitely avoid jargon when you're talking. So I'll give you a little bit of an example. So I'm in the process of buying a house. My contractor said to me, well, we need to check the L&Is on this house. And I thought, right, yes, I said, yes, we need to do that. And I thought to myself, what the heck is that? And we continued talking, and then he said L&I violation, and this little alarm went off in my head, and I thought, that's something I need to ask about. And so I asked him, and he told me it means, what does it mean? Licenses and inspection. There we go. So it just flies from my head at any given moment. And the thing is that, yes, your clients might ask you, what does this mean? But it makes them feel stupid. I mean, it made me feel stupid. I feel like I should know more about a house. I've lived in one all my life. But it's challenging. So you really want to think about that when you're talking to your audience. So what I want to do is I actually want to play a video for you. It's a TED Talk. Is everybody familiar with TED Talks? Have everybody seen a TED Talk before? I see a few nods. Okay, good. So I'm going to play a talk for you by an architect named Joshua Prince Ramus, and he's one of his projects was he actually worked on the Seattle library. And so he is somebody who does a great job of giving analogies and examples when he talks. Let's go ahead and watch this clip.
I'm going to speak to you today about architectural agency. But what I mean by that is it's time for architecture to do things again, not just represent things. This is a construction helmet that I received 2 years ago at the groundbreaking of the largest project I and my firm have ever been involved in. I was thrilled to get it. I was thrilled to be the only person standing on stage with that shiny silver helmet. I thought it represented the importance of the architect. I stayed thrilled until I got home, threw the helmet onto my bed, fell down onto my bed, and realized inside there was an inscription. Now, I think that this is a great metaphor for the state of our architecture and architects today. We are for decorative purposes only. Now, who do we have to blame? We can only blame ourselves. Over the last 50 years, the design and construction industry has gotten much more complex and has gotten much more litigious. And we architects are cowards. And so as we have faced liability, we have stepped back and back. And unfortunately, where there is liability, guess what there is? Power. So eventually we have found ourselves in a totally marginalized position way over here. Now what did we do? We're cowards, but we're smart cowards. And so we redefined this marginalized position as the place of architecture. We announced, hey, architecture, it's over here in this autonomous language. We're going to cede control of processes. And we are going to do something that was horrible for the profession. We actually created an artificial schism between creation and execution. As if you could actually create without knowing how to execute, as if you could actually execute without knowing how to create. Now, something else happened. And that's what we began to sell the world, that architecture was created by individuals creating genius sketches. And that the incredible amount of effort to deliver those sketches for years and years and years is not only something to be derided, but we would merely write it off as merely execution. Now, I would argue that that is as absurd as stating that 30 minutes of copulation is the creative act, and 9 months of gestation, and God forbid, 24 hours of child labor is merely execution. So what do we architects need to do? We need to stitch back creation and execution. And we need